The smell of petrol filled the air, and all I could feel was hot metal pressed against my chest. Is this where I die? What about my kids? I needed to get out of here. I needed to get to my kids. It was late July, and we had flown abroad for my cousin's wedding. My husband and I had been planning this for months. We wanted my mother and our children to spend quality time with our extended family. I was so excited. I hadn't been able to go back for years, and I missed them dearly. My cousin's wedding was absolutely magical, and the kids loved every moment of it. For the first time in years, we finally felt like one big family. After feeling the highs from my cousin's wedding, my husband and I didn't want to leave yet, and we decided we would turn our short holiday into a big family road trip, traveling around the countryside. I asked my mother to come along because my older sister and her family were joining us too. We decided that we would take 2 separate cars, with her husband and kids in one car, and myself, my husband, my kids, and my mother in the other car. As we started driving on the motorway at 120 kilometers per hour, I imagined how exciting this holiday would be for all of us until... Suddenly, a huge herd of sheep came running out onto the motorway, forcing my husband to swerve right in an attempt to avoid crashing into the sheep. Before I could even take in what was happening, I heard my mother's screams and my heart dropped. We had lost control and swerved left, hitting hard into the barrier, causing the car to flip upside down and propelling us into the sky. All I could hear were sickening screams. I tried to turn towards my children, but the impact locked me into my seat. And in the next moments, my neck snapped forward, bending my knees against the dashboard. The pain was so intense that I could barely focus. I tried to gain control of my body, but I couldn't. The smell of petrol filled the air and woke me up from the haze. All I could see were thorns splattered across the car. Hot metal was pressed down onto my chest, making every breath I took feel like I was swallowing hot coal. As I sat there, I wondered if this was the end, but I knew I couldn't die here. I needed to find my children. I needed to get out of here. I forced open my eyes and looked for my husband, who was frozen in place, with his eyes closed tightly. I heard my baby's muffled cries from the back seat, and instantly my body started to move. I squeezed out of my window and ran as fast as I could to my youngest son. For a moment, I thought the car had squished my baby, but luckily his car seat saved his life. Even though my body was in so much pain, I managed to pull my son out and yell for my husband. I had to find my other son. I held my baby close and ran to the other side of the car, where I found my 1-year-old son upside down, but still strapped in a seatbelt. I sighed a breath of relief, but the realization that my mother was nowhere to be seen hit me. My husband gently told our 1-year-old to climb out from the back door window as it was smashed open. "My mom! Where is my mom?" I asked my husband. A rising panic filled my stomach. I couldn't see her anywhere. My heart dropped. I thought the only other place left to look was underneath the car. My husband and a few people that were passing by lifted the car, but there was no sign of her. I stayed with the children whilst they went to search for her. I saw that my youngest had a big swollen head, as if it was 2 heads in one. I rocked him to keep him calm when I heard my husband scream, "Oh my God!" I couldn't believe what he found. My mother was laying behind a bush, with blood dripping from her nose and barely breathing. I ran towards her, terrified by what I saw. I knelt down beside my husband and started to blow into her mouth to help her breathe. "Please forgive me, Mom. Please." I was so hysterical that I didn't even realize the ambulance had come until they forced me off her and lifted her into the ambulance. I prayed that she would make it through, that she would hold on. My husband tried to comfort me, but we were both so shaken up that all we could do was hug our sons in silence. As soon as we got to the hospital, my mother was rushed into the emergency ward, while we were guided into a small room where they started asking my husband and I questions about the accident, and for our IDs. However, we did not have our ID with us because it was still in the car. I was becoming confused as to why they had to ask us so many questions. I just wanted to go make sure my mom was okay. But when I tried to ask the nurse if I could go, she said I wasn't allowed to leave until I finished answering her questions. At this point, I didn't know what to do. I was angry and so confused. Both my husband and my children were being scanned and treated, but no matter who I tried to speak to, no one would tell me anything. I ended up walking around like a lost puppy, asking everyone where I could find my mother, but for some reason, all they kept saying was, "She's doing fine, don't worry." But I could tell that something was very wrong. I called my sister and told her everything. She screamed in disbelief and reassured me that she would be there as soon as she could. As you can imagine, the whole day felt like a horrible nightmare, and while luckily my husband and children were not seriously injured, I couldn't get any information on my mother's condition. I was getting a bandage on my fractured shoulder when my sister arrived at the hospital. As soon as I saw her, she came rushing towards me and took me to the corner and said, "Listen, I'm going to tell you something, but please don't react. Our mother, she's gone." I woke up on my sister's shoulder where she told me that I had fainted, but I didn't remember anything. All I could think about was my poor mother. Everything felt like a terrible dream, and it felt like I was sleeping and that I would wake up from it. I didn't want to be here anymore. I just wanted to wake up and see my mother smiling down at me. I blinked a couple of times, trying to convince myself that she was still alive and that the car crash wasn't real, but there was no hope. Every time I opened my eyes, the reality came crashing down harder and harder. I was sitting in the hospital surrounded by everyone crying and grieving. I couldn't breathe. It has been over a month since my dear mother left this world, and honestly, I still find it hard to accept that she's gone. After the incident, my sons would constantly ask about her. I've tried my best to be strong for them and show them that everything will be okay, but the loss of my mom has been so hard. Sometimes I still imagine her here with me, hoping that she's just gone shopping and she'll return at any moment. But I know that she will never return. To everyone watching, cherish your loved ones as if it's your last day with them. Love them as much as you can and be kind to each other because honestly, there will come a day where they will leave forever and never come back. My mother was the strongest woman I have ever known, and I am so grateful for everything she did for our family. I also want to highlight the importance of seatbelts because even if they seem like a no-brainer, please don't ever drive without wearing one. Before the accident, I knew seatbelts were important, but it never crossed my mind just how significant they are. But I know now that they are the main reason why my family is still alive today.